Hey you, it's Allison. I'm a death doula, grief educator, and coach, as well as an end of life services planner. I wanted to share something with you. I'm going to read some of it, but I'm going to share something with you that just recently came out. And this is something that isn't talked a lot about, particularly from death doulas and people who are kind of navigating the funeral systems and what are a person's rights to it. So, just this past week, the Federal Trade Commission sent warning letters to multiple funeral homes across the United States, following kind of this undercover phone sweep where investigators discovered several violations of some funeral rules that are set in place. So the funeral rule includes requiring that funeral homes must, quote, tell persons who ask by telephone about the funeral provider's offerings or prices any accurate information from their price list. Any other relatable information that reasonably answers the questioning. And so this really gives consumers important rights when they are searching for funeral homes as as their loved one's going through the dying process or their loved one has died and this hasn't been taken care of. And unfortunately, when we're in that vulnerable state, it is really hard to kind of like think of questions. And, I'm sure that there are and I know that there are funeral homes who abide by this, but there are a lot of funeral homes that don't, and people don't know their rights because it's just not something that we, think of until the time comes. So what the FTC determined was one, there was multiple funeral homes that either refused to answer questions about pricing at all or provided inconsistent pricing for identical services. In some of those calls, the funeral home also misrepresented that the local health code required remains to be embalmed. If more than a certain number of people wanted to view the remains. Embalming is a process of preserving the body after the death. Most states do not require a body to be embalmed, and the few states that do require embalming only do so in limited circumstances, such as if there's refrigeration that's not available. Something else to keep in mind is that there were some funeral homes that promised to send a general price list, which is required to include in important disclosures, kind of the making sure that there's an itemized list of services. But what was happening is that they provided a list of package prices that didn't meet the funeral rule requirement of the general pricing list. And so, um, I there is the letters reiterate that were sent out to those funeral homes that weren't following the funeral rule. And so they were basically asking the funeral homes to take prompt remedial action to make sure that they're no longer violating the funeral rule. So this is something where a end of life doula or an end of life services planner can really help support you, particularly when you're in vulnerable moments, either right before the death or after the death has happened. Grief brain sets in. We don't know what questions to ask, and this is where a death doula could really support you to ensure that you are getting the right services, that you're getting consistent pricing, and that the funeral home is following the funeral rules that is set forth by the Federal Trade Commission. So this is something that doesn't get talked a lot about or isn't well known. I'm curious what your thoughts are when you hear about what I've just shared with you.